But thank you everyone for joining for the combined LAMBPLAN lambing ease release module. So this is part of the second phase, and like I said before, Peter Bradley, Victoria Ledger and Sam Morecambe from AGBU are on the call, and we'll be talking you through all of the updates that have been made to the lambing ease module. So just a very quick overview of what we'll be going through today. So we'll do a really quick recap of all of the combined LAMBPLAN enhancements to date. Then we'll talk through the updates that were made to the lambing ease module, as well as the validation around that and how it compares to the current terminal and maternal analyses. And then we'll also have a look at the lambing ease breeding values as well from there. So in terms of a recap of the combined LAMBPLAN, just as always, we'd like to start out by thanking and acknowledging that this is a huge body of work. So thanking our colleagues at AGBU. It's a really great time to work with them on such a big enhancement, as well as everyone within the SheepGenetics team that's contributed. This is a giant enhancement and doesn't happen overnight, nor with just one or two people. It's a whole team effort. And just wanted to, I guess, reinforce why we're doing combined LAMBPLAN. As always, just putting that emphasis at the forefront, that it is to future-proof our genetic evaluations for a more sustainable and long-term evaluation. So we've made a lot of enhancements across the board for multiple modules to improve our data management, to increase the efficiency of the analysis, to ensure greater across-breed comparisons of genetic merit for head-to-head representations and comparisons of terminals and maternals, and also to ensure a more accurate prediction of genetic merit, which is obviously very important. But to be able to future-proof our genetic evaluations, we have had to make a lot of changes. So it's just part of the process to ensure that we can actually tick off all of those boxes to make sure that we do deliver a better evaluation for everyone. And it is a world-leading evaluation. We do go on about this quite a lot, but we are very proud of all of the enhancements that have been made. Some of the work that's in the combined LAMBPLAN analysis hasn't been seen before across the world. So it is really, really exciting research and really exciting to be part of it. So I guess the whole point is to obviously combine the terminal and maternal analyses through a research pipeline. And to be able to provide the one-stop shop for the genetic evaluation of terminal and maternal genetics. And it's a very big body of work. And to just very briefly summarize that very large body of work, I'll just run through some of the enhancements that we've made to date, and they've been made for all modules that have been released to date, including the lambing ease module as well currently. So what we have here for the next few slides is a table of the enhancements that we made, the impact, whether it had an impact on ranking between animals, whether it had an impact on the actual breeding value itself, and then the level of impact. So the first enhancements that we made was obviously combining both the terminal and maternal data sets, which had a large level of impact. We also removed SIL data, so we haven't received any data from SIL for quite a while, so that data was redundant. And we also removed phenotypes from animals pre-2000 drop. So we're obviously still keeping the pedigree of those animals, but any phenotypic information was non-redundant and not really informing breeding values. So we've decided to drop all of that. We've also removed syndicate pedigree. So any animal that has an NAM or a syndicate sire defined, we are no longer using syndicate pedigree in the evaluation, as well as removing single animal contemporary groups, and also removed Hoggett fat and muscle scans, as well as Hoggett WEC data. And that's all just due to the fact that all of this data was essentially non-redundant and not contributing anything to breeding values, or current drop breeding values, sorry. We've also gone through and updated the data analysis pipeline. This has had a minimal impact, but helped us streamline and optimize, I guess, the computational side of things. It hasn't had an impact on ranking, nor has it had an impact on the actual breeding values itself. It's just actually enabled us to produce a more accurate analysis faster, which is always a good thing. We've also updated the lifetime contemporary grouping. This has had a moderate impact. You can go back and watch the first webinar or read the analysis enhancements booklets for a really comprehensive deep dive into all of these updates. But for lifetime contemporary grouping, we've moved on to group on wool, weck and weight for the combined land plan analysis. We also reevaluated and updated the fixed effects, which has had a moderate impact as well. We have updated and re-estimated the genetic parameters. This has had a moderate impact as well as an impact on the ranking between animals as well as the actual breeding values themselves in combined land plan. And we've made a global heterosis adjustment as well, which has had a moderate impact too. And then finally, one of the other large enhancements that we've made is the better utilization of genomic information. So this has included updating our genetic groups, increasing our genomic reference population, which have both had a moderate impact, as well as the increase on the weighting of the genomic relationship in the analysis. So if you've got a 50K genotype, we're placing more emphasis on that more accurate relationship when we are looking at relationships in the combined land plan analysis, which has had a high impact as well on the overall combined land plan analysis. So again, if you want to go into those previous enhancements in more detail, we've got a lot of resources online which you can do so, but we'll be focusing for the rest of today on the lambing ease section of this particular release. So this is, I guess, the second part of phase 2, and the lambing ease breeding values for combined land plan will be officially out on the 15th of March. So the next terminal and maternal analysis run, which will be being kicked next week. Again, really important to just reinforce that the combined land plan breeding values will be run in parallel to the current terminal and maternal breeding values. It is a research analysis, so that's why I guess we are running them in parallel. We also have lots of resources online to direct you to, but if you've got questions, you can always get in touch with SheepGenetics. And it's really important to re-benchmark against the appropriate percentile bands when you're looking at your combined land plan breeding values. So the actual value of the breeding value might look a little different between the current terminal and maternal analyses compared to the combined land plan, but it's where that breeding value sits relative to the percentile bands for each analysis that's important to think about when you're re-benchmarking. And it is a long process to get this combined land plan analysis out. So it's really important that you're considering both sets of breeding values, being the current terminal or maternal and the combined land plan when you're actually making your classing and joining decisions, because obviously we'll be transitioning away from the current terminal and maternal breeding values in 2027. So it's really important to, I guess, keep both breeding values in mind when you're having a look at your classing and joining decisions. With all that said, I'm going to hand over to Sam Walkham, one of the scientists at AgBoo, who's done quite a lot of work on this analysis, to take us through the updates to the model.
Beautiful. Thanks, Marnie, and thanks for the intro. So hopefully you can hear me, I assume so. So we'll continue on. So I'm going to just go through what we've done to the lambing ease module. As Marnie said, a lot of the work is replicating what we've done in the modules we've already released, and then doing specific things to lambing ease and gestation length, which I'll talk about today. And why is that not changing for me? It's very slow. Do you want to just control it for me, Marnie, and I'll ask for you to change the slides. Sorry on. So with scoring lambing ease, we're using the first 3 traits, whether it's the first 3 scores, unassisted, easy pull or a hard pull, and then we're using that to drive our lambing ease trait. Next slide, please. So in comparison to some of our other analysis or modules within combined land plan, and I guess in our land plan evaluations, the lambing ease is a smaller evaluation. So we don't have as much data as we do in the other growth traits, and some of our breeds are not as well represented there. So we do have probably less to go with, but for those higher recording traits and breeds and flocks, we should still see some really good breeding values coming out of this evaluation. So the challenges with lambing ease is a bit different to other traits. One of them is that we treat it as a categorical trait. This is really a statistical problem. And so we, instead of treating it as linear, we do see that we have a threshold between each of those scores. What it means is that when we build our software to do the evaluation, it takes a little bit more statistical questions, and shifting from our old evaluation LAMBPLAN into our new pipeline meant that doing this module has taken a little bit longer. With that has come the need to update our accuracy software. So we had some software, effectively we had two types of accuracy software, one for linear traits and one for the categorical trait like lambing ease. We've been able to consolidate that as part of this enhancement, and so that we have a single accuracy software across all of our LAMBPLAN evaluations. This has meant that we do see a slight shift in our accuracies that is not associated with the data, it's just with how we've done the analysis. So you will see a little bit of a shift there, but nothing too major. It is also important to notice, to recognise that in regards to lambing ease and combined LAMBPLAN, effectively we're creating a lambing ease evaluation for maternal breeds. The current lambing ease for maternals in their evaluation is still not using genomic information, and so bringing them into this now combined LAMBPLAN evaluation enables that. And so we should see quite a big improvement in maternals, and the changes in maternals are more noticeable than we observe in the terminals because of this. So if we think about our current module, which we updated in 2023 for the terminals, we moved to a 4-trait module where we include birth weight, gestation length, dead at birth, and lambing ease, taking into regards the correlations between those 4 traits to help us predict the animal's lambing ease and gestation length. So obviously birth weight's a problem. It's okay, we can keep moving. So what was discussed in 2023 was the merit of changing our lambing ease trait so that it reflects lambing ease in singles and multiples. And so we were able to tackle that as part of the enhancements into combined LAMBPLAN, because we do understand that we have differences in how lambing ease is expressed in our twins and singles. And as you can see, we have a big change. It's about 50% of all litters are singles and 50% are multiples. So about 70 to 80% of animals are born as a multiple. So now in our new module, we've separated that lambing ease trait into lambing ease singles and lambing ease multiples. And the reason behind that is that we see that we've only really got a genetic correlation of 0.4. So it's moderately strong and works in the same direction, but it's clear that these are not exactly the same trait. And so treating them as independent traits has some benefit in our ability to select for lambing ease. Do you want to press the button? Yep. Also, when we look at that, we find that our association between lambing ease and our correlated traits, which we're using in our model to help produce the breeding values, differs as well. So high birth weight is really a bigger problem in singles than multiples, and longer gestation length seems to be more of a problem in multiple births than single births. So we can account for that different relationship between the correlation traits and our lambing ease traits. What you will end up having, though, is that we'll present to you a single lambing ease trait, which will just be lambing ease, where we take into account the 2 traits. And in this case, we're also only fitting a single maternal effect across the litters. So we just have an effect of the U for that. Next slide, please. So how do we report lambing ease and gestation length? If we look at what we're doing now, we've got our 4 traits going into the module. We then estimate both additive and maternal effects for all 4 traits. We don't use this module to report birth weight breeding values. We use a larger evaluation out of the growth module to do that. And we don't produce a dead at birth breeding value. So at the moment, we produce a lambing ease and gestation length traits. And we present both the direct lambing ease and gestation length, but we also produce 2 traits currently called daughter traits. And lambing ease daughter and gestation length daughter are effectively an addition of both the maternal genetic effect plus half the direct effect for both traits. So When we've updated our new evaluation, we've simplified this a little bit. So our lambing ease trait will be a weighted average based on the industry expression of single and multiple lambing ease, so what the data is showing us. And that'll get combined to produce a lambing ease breeding value. We'll still have our direct gestation length breeding value, but now instead of presenting the daughter trait, we're just going to present the maternal genetic difference for lambing ease and gestation length. So you have your direct trait selecting on the lamb's influence on lambing ease and gestation length, and then the maternal traits for the ewe or the dam's effect on those two traits. So hopefully this simplifies it and makes those traits a bit easier to use. What it has meant in our updates to the genetic parameters is that there's going to be a little bit of a change. So we've utilized our data for the combined evaluation. We've updated these to understand the genetic variation. In comparison to other modules, we're probably seeing a little bit more effect of the changes to the parameters because we are changing how we're dealing with lambing ease, and we're also shifting the maternals quite a bit from what they were. Again, we didn't see much value of fitting a breed level parameters, so we're just fitting a universal series of correlations for our traits. So as we discussed earlier, our genetic group structure shifts within our evaluation to align with what we've done with the other traits. That dot point in the middle is wrong. Sorry, forgot to update it. Our genetic group structure is based at the breed level as we have done for the other modules. So effectively the genetic group structure for lambing ease reflects what we've implemented in our other modules. So can move on from that one, please. So in Reflect, we will see changes as a result of updates to the model and how we're defining the traits, and all as a result of the parameters and genetic groups. It's important to note that we'll see bigger changes in the for maternal breeders moving to combined LAMBPLAN because we're now also incorporating genomic information in the evaluation, which we were not seeing in the current maternal LAMBPLAN. So we're effectively giving you a new evaluation to look at. So let's have a look at the lambing ease breeding values and the validation. So as we've reported before with our other modules, we're effectively we look at several validation techniques, and we're just going to focus on one of them, which is sort of an overall summary. And in essence, what we do is we cut the data back, and if we were to predict a breeding value based on the new animals just using their pedigree and genomic relationships, how well does that breeding value align with the breeding value that comes about once we start to put data for those animals into the evaluation? So as you can see, when we look at what that correlation between the part and the whole, so how reliable is the breeding value going to be once we put information, add extra information in the whole, we can see that our combined LAMBPLAN evaluation has made a significant improvement for all of our traits there. So that's a box plot covering the two maternal traits for lambing ease and gestation length and the two direct traits. So you can see that we've made improvements on both the terminal evaluation and in particular, especially against that maternal evaluation that we're currently using. So we do see that improvement as we've seen with the other modules. This is a bit more of a condensed look at some of the breeds, and mainly this is the larger reporting breeds for lambing ease. And again, we can see across all of our breeds, we do see that improvement in the quality of our breeding values for our 4 traits coming out of this module across all of the breeds. You can see that there's less improvement in some of the breeds where we have that have come primarily from the terminal evaluation and a lot of data. So again, we see advantages of bringing maternals into this new evaluation. So condensing that really quickly, our validation has confirmed that we are doing a better job with our new evaluation for lambing ease. We do believe that you'll see more variability in some of the smaller breeds for some of the traits where the recording is low, but they will be still doing a better job than what we had before. So again, We have a lot of confidence in what we've been producing for you up until date, and this is just an improvement, and we're making a better job through Combined LAMBPLAN for this module. So changes in accuracy, if we look at terminals, so in the blue, across all our terminal breeds, we're seeing an improvement on average. For gestation length, we do see a slight decline in the accuracy of lambing, not a reflection of the data, just a reflection of slightly how we're calculating the accuracy. So it's more a reflection of that estimate, and when you're bringing two traits together to make a single breeding value, how you estimate the accuracy is a little bit different. So this isn't so much a reflection of the change in the data or the quality of the evaluation, but just more in how we're estimating accuracy for lambing. As you can see in maternals, we do see much more of an improvement in accuracy, and that's again brought about by bringing in that genomic information. So this is a big improvement in what the quality of the lambing evaluation for the maternal breeds. So changes in breeding values, as we've observed with the other modules, we do see, we will see some changes and shifts. Please note that the y-axis is in these plots is not the true axis of the EBVs that you observe. This is before they're transformed into the values you see, but it gives you an idea of what the sort of change we're seeing. As you can see, for lambing and gestation length, we do see a bit of a base shift for the terminal breeds, but overall the trends are very similar. But we do see a slight shift in how in the genetic trends for maternal lambing, and that's primarily because we have seen most of our parameter change being around that trait, and the maternal variance for lambing being our biggest shifter. If we look at maternals, we do see similar trends. I wouldn't pay as much attention to these changes because these changes are good and shifting, whereas the terminals, we would like to see them a bit more similar. But again, pretty favourable and going in the right direction. So if we now go focus on our top size for the 23 drop, so these are highly, the information's there and they should hold pretty strongly. As you can see, don't have a lot of lambing data, so it's a pretty sparse plot, but for the terminal size, we do see a strong relationship between the two evaluations, with the best still being the best, but there is some level of re-ranking there. And we also see a little bit of re-ranking in the gestation length traits. If we look at the maternals, again, smaller data set of breeds, not as much recording, and again, the shifting to a genomic evaluation, as well as the other changes in our analysis and the bringing of the data together, we'll see more re-ranking changes in those size, but we still see that the better animals are still the better animals, which is always pleasing. So that brings us to sort of the summary of the lambing gestation length traits and what we've done. As we said, the enhancements continues to build on what we've presented in the earlier phases as we bring that through, but we did have had to implement some different changes that are unique to this module due to how we deal with lambing and gestation length. So we're very confident that we've produced a world-leading enhancement here for lambing, and we hope it's suitable to help you guys make better breeding decisions.
Fabulous. Thanks very much for that, Sam. Just in a wrap up for if you've got questions, obviously this webinar was focused solely on the lambing and gestation length module, but we have previous webinar recordings for our prior enhancement releases, so jump online, watch those, read our analysis enhancement booklet, which goes into a bit more detail around some changes that were made. Make sure that you compare your results and re-benchmark using the correct percentile bands. And if you've still got questions and want to go through things in a bit more detail, then obviously get in contact with SheepGenetics or book a one-on-one with a SheepGenetics development officer. But that, I guess, concludes our presentation part of this particular webinar. Were there any questions that have come through, or does anyone want to put the hand up and come off mute and ask a question at all?
just while people might be thinking of questions to ask or getting ready to raise their hand, I just thought I'd maybe add a bit of a comment, Sam, as we're going through and thinking about the journey for lambing ease to date for combined lamb plan. I guess maybe a bit of an analogy here, because what we're comparing from where maternals have started and where terminals have come from, it's and versus what I guess the lambing ease analysis now looks like for combined lamb plan. I was kind of thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but the maternals are starting from more of a horse and cart lambing ease module and going towards a Toyota Land Cruiser, whereas the terminal breeds are sort of starting from a RAV4 and going towards a Toyota Land Cruiser. Is that a fair analogy?
One of your best, Peter. So yeah, I think that's a fair way to think about it. I think it's one of the reasons we were quite excited about combined lamb plan was the opening up of the new modules and analyses to each of the groups. For example, maternals are now getting access to lambing ease, and hopefully, well, when we release reproduction, that'll open up the reproduction module to terminal breeders. It's of course not an obligation to use them, but it enables people to get access to the best evaluation available to them.
Excellent. Thanks, Sam. So we have had a question come through, and Marnie, I might throw this one to you, from Dave around how these new combined values, whether it be lambing ease or any of the other traits that we've released to date, and how do they impact how breeders should be using mate cell this coming mating season?
Yeah, good one. So for the combined lamb plan breeding values, we don't have mate cell set up currently for combined lamb plan purely because we don't have an index for combined lamb plan just yet, and mate cell needs to run primarily on an index. So our recommendation, Dave, is to use the current terminal or maternal evaluation analysis when you're setting up your mate cell run. Select the current index that you best align with, and then load any combined lamb plan breeding values in as a custom trait. And there's steps online how to do that, and then how to, I guess, interpret the output and find the output for the mid-parent breeding value for the expected progeny of the custom trait that you've loaded in.
Yeah, so there's some really good resources that Marnie and the team have pulled together around how to use all of these traits in mate cell. So thanks, Marnie. Now, Steve, I see you've got your hand up. I think we've enabled your mic. You might just need to come off mute.
Or pop a question in the chat if you can.
Yeah, I think we've just
lost him.
Just lost him. He might have hit the wrong button. I'll just enable his mic again. Steve, I think you're back. Your mic's enabled if you wanted to try and come off mute if you still had a question.
Yeah, I think it's semi-covered. My question was about mate cell and whether the data can be used in that, but I think you just covered that with the last answer.
Excellent. And I guess obviously as we finalize all the traits, we'll be and have indexes available, and that's, I guess, been one of the main reasons we haven't been able to go mate cell straight away, is mate cell's relying on an index. So once we have those available, we'll be able to definitely next mating season we'll have indexes and all the traits available to run your mate cells on.
Beautiful. Well, I'm not sure if there's any other questions coming through or anyone that has raised their hand to come off mute. But if there is anything, pop them in the chat. We'll be around for another minute or so. Otherwise, give us a call, send us an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
There has just been a very quick one come through before anyone jumps off, which is, can you explain the difference between some traits in the terminal maternal versus the combined analysis, e.g. post-weaning weight in the terminal and the combined? Yeah. So Marnie or Sam, did you want to jump in, or?
I can give a very quick answer, but I think there's a webinar from phase 1 which might be worth just reviewing to get a bit more of a longer version. But effectively, the changes for weight and the re-ranking that I suppose you're talking about is focused on mainly changes to how the data has come in. So we've done a few contemporary group changes. So some animals are now more fairly being compared to better contemporaries. The changes to the genomic structure and how we deal with breed effects, and the now accounting for relationships between breeds at a genomic level will cause some re-ranking, as well as just adding more information to the evaluation. We do have a lot of sharing of animals across the 2 analyses, which enabled us to bring this in. And as a result of that, we do see a shift in breeding values as we've better modelled those animals based on improved data. So I think that's my very quick summary of it, but I recommend having a read of the enhancements and going back to the first webinars on that.
Yeah, and I might just add on there, because I know there's a few people on the call that have asked about this before, is for some breeds, or for all breeds, we've seen quite a big, I guess, base shift of what is 0, and that was one of those points Marnie mentioned before, that we're not using phenotypes pre the year 2000, so that reset what 0 was. And that a lot of the re-ranking that you might have seen is what Sam's noted, but that, I guess, the absolute value change is related to that particular enhancement of not using or resetting what the base is. It is worth noting that we have received feedback around the impact of that base shift for post-weaning weight in particular, and the impact that that's had on some breeds. So as Marnie really highlighted nicely at the start, this is a research analysis, and we are looking at do we, I guess it doesn't change the ranking, but do we shift the base to make breeding values, particularly for some breeds that might be, say, very, or more of their animals are negative for a trait like post-weaning weight. How do we, I guess, reassess that? And that is part of that release timeline that Marnie put up at the start. We are looking at that, but that won't change the ranking. It'll just change what the absolute value is, and I guess remove any animals that are negative, or a majority of animals that are negative for a trait like post-weaning weight. So that helps a bit with the client education piece coming into ram selling season. So we have that on our list to review, but we did want to release the other trait groups first and do that in one hit, as opposed to making too many changes all at once, or sorry, making changes multiple times throughout the year, I should say.
Perfect. Well, it doesn't look like there's been any other questions in those few minutes that have come through. So I might leave it there. Say thank you very much to everyone that's jumped online, and we'll see you guys later. And if you've got questions, give the main line a call or send us an email.